poured it all around the place, made a trail of it out the door, then lit the whole thing up and watched it burn. But he can't get you now. He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
A Nightmare on Elm Street provides more than just a scary story, but also weaves in a religious theme, or should I say, anti-religious theme. Let's discuss how Freddy Krueger represents a corrupted form of Jesus Christ, and how the overall film is a warning about organized religion. To understand A Nightmare on Elm Street, you need to know a little bit about writer-director Wes Craven. His trek to Hollywood stardom didn't happen quickly. He went to college and became a teacher for a little while. After networking with other filmmakers, he began his professional film career as a sound editor. Eventually, Craven got the chance to write and direct a few horror films of his own. His big break came in 1984 with the creation of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Please, God.
This is God.
Craven's religious experience came from growing up in a super strict Baptist household in Cleveland, Ohio. His father passed away when Craven was only 5 years old. His mother was left to raise her kids by herself, and she did so with the help of her Bible teachings. Craven's youth had been instilled with so much religion that he rebelled, of course, becoming a provoking force as seen through his artwork. Christianity is one of the most dominant religions in the world, and is certainly the most popular in the United States. However, as positive as it is to its believers, Christianity has many critics. Craven is obviously one of those critics, and we see this in the depiction of Freddy throughout the story, and his revival in the final scene.
Looking good, girl.
What significance does Freddy's return carry now that we know of Craven's religious background? Freddy Krueger has become iconic in cinema, and is arguably the most recognizable human horror villain in movie history. And there's a good reason for Freddy's infamy. It's not just that he was a child killer, or used finger knives or supernatural methods to slaughter his victims. Freddy is popular, especially regarding the original film, because of what he symbolizes. On the surface, Freddy's a serial killer who haunts people's dreams. But a movie and its franchise that's become so eternal with audiences must have more depth and meaning to have lasted this long. Freddy was a filthy child killer in real life, but for some reason he was allowed to be resurrected and hunt down, once again, the Springwood Kids.
You know who Fred Krueger was? He was a filthy child murderer who killed at least 20 kids in the neighborhood.
He didn't take his revenge on the parents who burned him alive. That would be too easy of a revenge story for Craven to write. Freddy came back in the kids' dreams and just continued killing. You have to wonder what's so important to Craven that he wanted the Freddy character to keep killing children even after his death. To Craven, it's not just Freddy's desire to hurt kids that's the focus, but it's also the teens themselves who are significant. You have to examine this from the anti-religious perspective that Craven wants you to. The teens in Elm Street are symbolic of children affected by Christianity's influence, and it's also Craven's depiction of his own childhood. He was helpless at the hands of his domineering, zealot mother, but now, as a filmmaker, he has the chance to remedy that childhood trauma by creating the Freddy character and depicting the treatment of his victims as a message to others suffering from similar conditions. To Craven, religion is demonic and traumatic towards children. Freddy is the Antichrist. That's who Freddy Krueger is, a Jesus devil who does the exact opposite of the Messiah Christ. When Tina awakens from her first nightmare, she immediately grabs the crucifix from her bedroom wall. She holds it close in hopes that it will protect her from the terror she's endured in her dream. Next, we're introduced to the children's song recounting how to fight Freddy. It even mentions a crucifix, connecting Freddy with religion.
5, 6, grab your crucifix.
Later that night, back at Tina's house, she sleeps with her boyfriend Rod in her mother's bed, while Nancy sleeps in Tina's bed. The same crucifix on Tina's bedroom wall seems to randomly fall off. Nancy inspects it and keeps it by her side. Freddy appears within the wall where the crucifix was just hanging. Not only did Freddy knock down the crucifix so he could take its place as its godly replacement, but Freddy's arms are wide open, cruciform, like Christ on the cross. We even get a shot of the crucifix to remind us of this. The religious theme gets lathered on pretty thick during Tina's second dream. If there was any confusion about the comparison between Freddy and Jesus, then it gets solved when Tina asks for God's help in the alley.
Please, God.
This is God.
Freddy outright calls himself God. He knows there isn't any hope for Tina because he has complete control over her while she's dreaming. Rod and Glenn are also both hopeless victims when they encounter Freddy. Not only does Freddy have a God complex, but he is portrayed as powerful as God. More mentions of religion happen in the third act. As Nancy prepares to face Freddy in her dreams, she recites a child's bedtime prayer, blessing herself before her mission begins to face the monster.
And now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
As Nancy is touring the boiler room in her dream, she finds Tina's crucifix, which looks as if it's hidden under the blankets of a bed. Rod's open switchblade is there too. Freddy keeps items of his victims in his bed as trophies and souvenirs. During the opening boiler room scene with Tina, we get a quick glimpse of Freddy's personal area. You can see the makings of a cart with blankets, and when Nancy finds Freddy's area later in the story, you can see a desk with a dirty mirror. There's even an old radio on the cluttered desk. Freddy was most likely homeless and living in the old abandoned boiler room. Nancy looks at the crucifix, but is interrupted by Freddy's appearance to show that he was there watching, just as he had with Tina. And once again, Freddy shows up whenever the crucifix does. He couldn't be made more obvious to represent the Antichrist if Craven said it himself. The entire boiler room is like one big hellscape, and Freddy is the devil. Pipes are bursting steam, hanging chains, lit furnaces light up the setting with shadows. We see a third act dungeon similar to this in Craven's 1994 attempted reboot and very clever metafiction story New Nightmare. But one last very important element in the story needs addressing, and is very close to home for the director. We should discuss the role of Nancy's mother, Marge, in all this. She's the only adult who is killed by Freddy, and she's the only character killed twice in the film. Glenn, Tina, and Rod all return, although their fate is unclear as they drive off with Nancy. But Nancy's mother is certainly fixated on by Freddy. He doesn't kill her with his blades or by some supernatural spin, like how Freddy does with Glenn. Her death is simple to Freddy. He takes the time to personally use his hands during both instances to attack and kill her. Using his blades on Marge would be too easy of a death. He wants to relish in her fright and panic as he strangles her. So, since Freddy hasn't attacked any other adults throughout the story, then why is Marge so special to him? She and the other neighborhood parents, who likely included Nancy's father too, all took part in Freddy's murder. But Marge is the most affected by it. She lives in guilt and misery for her actions. Marge, since the murder of Freddy, and probably the divorce from Nancy's father, has become an alcoholic. It's a result from the guilt she suffers from killing Freddy and the overall horrors of Freddy's murder spree. During her monologue in the basement with Nancy, it seems as if Marge orchestrated the lynching of Freddy herself. She doesn't mention any other parents by name.
A bunch of us parents tracked him down after they let him out.
Just as Freddy keeps souvenirs of his victims, Marge was rewarded with Freddy's glove as a souvenir too. The story portrays Marge and the other parents as just as vicious and without morals as Freddy was. The film was really a critique on parenting. The parents and their kids are damned by Freddy while he's alive and dead. It isn't until Marge reveals Freddy's knives to Nancy that Freddy takes on a more physical manifestation in the real world than he previously had. Nancy is wide awake when Freddy attacks her through the unplugged phone, and most obvious is the manner in which Glenn is killed. Sure, Freddy attacked Glenn when he was sleeping, but how can anyone explain his odd death? Only a supernatural answer could explain that. Glenn's strange death would likely force, through extreme guilt, the admission of Freddy's murder from the parents involved. But let's circle back to Craven's religious upbringing with his mother. He held her responsible for overwhelming him with her Baptist dogma. Marge is symbolic of Craven's own mother. He's getting revenge on her through his artwork. Craven defeats his childhood trauma by expressing his warnings of organized religion by creating A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Please, God.
This is God.